Welcome to the Channel Champions Podcast, powered by Evolve IP, hosted by Zach Anderson. Today, we'll explore the always evolving landscape of the IT, telephony, and communications channel. If you are a trusted advisor, strategist, IT consultant, or sales engineer, this one's for you. Today's guest is...
Welcome to the Channel Champions Podcast. This is episode 16. Today I have the CEO and founder of Caliber Solutions out of Houston, Texas, Mr. Chris Gamble. Sir,
hello,
thanks
Zach.
so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Today we are going to talk about what Chris calls the paradox of abundance, which is a very cool title for today's episode.
Right.
So we'll talk about a few things, that being one. We'll talk about Caliber Solutions and their opportunity and disruption strategy, Novar Solutions. We'll get into some different solutions such as maybe UCaaS, maybe CCaaS, CX, maybe a little bit of DaaS. We'll see where it goes.
Sure.
But I definitely want to get into a little bit more about who you are and how you got into the space. So
Sure.
You were named... Absolutely. You were named to the Channel Futures 101 Best Agents in the channel in 2022. You played college football at the University of Houston, which is amazing. And you lead the charge on so many amazing charity events in Texas, autism awareness, Meals on Wheels, Brothers in Arms. And I did a little bit of looking into the Burlsworth Trophy on your LinkedIn, which is super cool. So I'd like to get into that. But
sure,
let's get into how you got into the channel and let's just get into some background. So tell us about you, Chris.
Yeah. So, well, look, you covered it there as far as being a competitor, playing college football. I mean, everything about me is rooted in competition. We're based in Houston. I'm a student athlete at Houston, met my lovely wife there. We have 3 amazing kids, and I just love competing. And I think I competed on the way over here, as a matter of fact, at the stoplight. So, it's just rooted in me, man. And my uncle actually, I've been in this industry for 22 years, and my uncle was, he was in the industry and he was a sales guy, and I come from a family of salesmen, if you will. And all I saw my entire career out of my father and out of, it's a lot of the men in our family was, they were hustlers, they were competitors, they were always out there, trying to help others and always seeking, continuous improvement. And so that was just rooted in me as an individual. And, I'm drawn to that energy, and I believe that, rejecting the rejection that comes your way is really the name of the game. And so we see opportunity there for our customers, when roadblocks are presented. And I like to, pride myself on kind of being that roadblock remover for our customers. And it's a target-rich environment. It's always evolving, and it pays pretty well, And I saw and through through those dollars that are able to fund us, we found creative ways to offer that back to our clients, and I think that's one of the things that makes us truly unique in the channel, and it's probably why we've got some of the recognition we've got. Is we're playing in a little bit different space than I think most partners or agents are playing in. We deal with large enterprise organizations, and it's not a transactional approach. It's there's a methodology behind it, and that's really what drives me and keeps me interested in this. Is it's constantly evolving, and it gives me an opportunity to be creative for others. Blame it all on my uncle.
So what was your first job in the technology space?
Yeah. So literally got the week I completed my collegiate career, I literally walked out of school because it was, I wasn't going to play in the NFL. That was a lifelong dream. I could get, they were offering internet classes over the web. So I thought, it's time, it's time to get busy. So I went and worked for a CLEC here in Houston called NextLink. And, I'm big on mentors, big on learning from others, and modeling the masters is one of the things that I like to say, and learning from those that came before us. And there was a gentleman there, his name was Wayne Allen. He was a sales engineer, and he was a spectacular teacher. And I just tried to be a sponge and absorb everything I could from him. And, I saw commission checks that I couldn't even believe, and finished college, and actually ended up leaving that organization pretty quickly and helped start a firm with my uncle up in Kentucky, and lived in his basement, and went out and started the process, and just baptism by fire, right? And so I was NextLink was the first stop, and felt like I understood the basics at that point, and then really went straight to the channel. I was a direct salesperson really for only 6 months out of college, and finished college over the internet, and went into my new schooling, if you will, and learning the channel. So that was in 2000. And so
Wow.
23 years ago, I got in it, and really I started developing my own, methods, my own, and really what I figured out is that if I just immersed myself in the content, looked for opportunity to improve, the experience for my customers. If I had recommendations that maybe they hadn't thought of, or that the industry just hadn't presented to them, that would make me unique, and that would build, that would help me establish credibility with those individuals. So, it goes back to the transfer of trust. And I think that's what I learned at a very young age, is that if you can transfer trust between individuals, they'll ask you to help with anything. And so that's, I think one of the biggest compliments I've ever gotten from customers is they ask me for advice on things that are outside of anything that we do at Caliber. That says that we've transferred trust, and they see value in our approach and our methods and our expertise. So,
sure. So, what was the state of the channel like in 2000?
Intelisys was the first distributor's name that I remember ever hearing. It was. We were still kind of in that Telecom Deregulation Act of 1996, still trying to find out where the opportunities were. And the MABELs were, starting to, they were broken up at that point. But I think everyone was trying to understand that, oh, wait, there's choices now. And how do you decide between these choices? And so it kind of goes back to the beginning of the paradox of abundance, because, when there's monopolies, you don't have that. And so through the Deregulation Act, then you started to see more choices, more complexity, paralysis by analysis started setting in. And so that's where I saw an opportunity to enter, as an advisor, and help customer, help with recommendations. And so, there wasn't that many players, I'll say, in 2000. I just don't recall, too many players. The ones that were there you had a lot of groups that were aligning with, AT&T, and the Bells, and there was a lot of, slamming still going on with the IXCs in the long distance realm. So it was, and then going out and helping customers, cut costs from off the LEC was really the name of the game. So, it's funny. I haven't thought back to then, but, customers, I will say 23 years ago, it was the default was you just buy direct from the phone company. And anybody else that walked in that didn't have, a Bell on their business card, they thought you were a snake oil salesman. And so I can remember walking into, back in the day, cold calling and walking into companies and literally being laughed at. Like, you're not the phone company, and so then it was like, well, I am with the phone company. I'm with the new phone company, and so it was really just became, it was educating customers that had no idea that there was an opportunity to eliminate waste that had crept in their IT budget. And because, the deregulation had presented an opportunity that maybe they weren't aware of. And so I just tried to position myself as the expert in that field. And it was an education process. And what I learned a long time ago is, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And, no doesn't mean no. No means I don't understand. Tell me more. And so that's the way I always took it. And so, again, rejecting the rejection. You'll keep hearing me say that. That's just an ethos that I live by. And as any old sales guy that's knocked on doors, you'll hear no way more than you hear yes. And so it became a game. And the game was they're just coming from a place of ignorance. That was it was my job to educate.
So what made you move up to, you said Tennessee, right?
Kentucky.
Yeah. Kentucky, that's right.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. My uncle, he did a deal with the state of Kentucky, and the residual income that he made, he would show me checks that would come in his mailbox, and it was more than most people made in 2 or 3 years, and he got one of those every month. And he got it for 5 years, and he retired, and he started racing cars, and I said, okay, he's not that smart, so I'm going to do what he does. I'm kidding. He'd get a kick out of that. But no, it was amazing. It was a financial vehicle that I had never seen before, right? Other than, if you own pump jacks in the oil field, and this money just keeps showing up. And so really understanding how to utilize that as a tool to help our customers. I mean, that's when I started thinking, okay, there's an avenue here that most customers don't realize, and then there's the conundrum of educating around, educating a customer. Well, I buy direct. Why do I need to buy from you?
Right.
And so that there's, that's really we're 23. I'm 23 years into this, and I still see that challenge today.
That's what I was going to ask you. Was like, what has been the difference between introducing what you do as an advisor or as an agent back then versus today? Because I can imagine, technology advisors are much more prevalent today, obviously, but there are still plenty of companies out there, I'm sure, that are like, wait, you do what for me? Or like, are you trying to work for us?
Right. Yeah.
So like, what was it like back then versus what's
yeah.
like
So that's easy. Back then it was transactional. It was like, give me your phone, can I see your phone bill? Can I give you a quote? Let me show you how much money you'll save. Are you in or are you out? And then, well, is my phone's going to go off, or my light's going to go off? Are my printer's going to work? It was, at that point I was early on. And so I was not up market in enterprise at that particular moment. So for me, it was very transactional. And then, so what I ended up learning, over the last 20 years is that the problems we saw in small to medium are there at enterprise, and they may even be exacerbated at enterprise. And so, what continued to happen over the last 23 years, obviously, is you have more choices, and then so the cool thing and what I love about the channel and what I love about technology is that it's technology, especially, is that it's evolving all the time. So it's a new challenge. And so, when I got into it, it was Frame Relay, and we were having a ton of fun, with zero CIR and committed information rates, and educating customers how one solution was unique compared to the next. And then all of a sudden, Frame Relay disappears, and now it's MPLS, and so now I had to immerse myself in, what is that? And, and having a telecom dictionary on my desk, I was, every, pixie dust, all these things that were just like coming at me. I'm like, these are words that IT guys are using, and I need to be speaking their language. And I couldn't believe it that there was really another language that was being spoken. And I'm not an engineer. I wasn't interested in diving that deep into technology, but I was interested in helping them. So I knew I had to speak their language. And so, now where we find ourselves today is that, there is this abundance of information. And I look at organizations and I try to help them understand what is the best practice? What is the best outcome? How do you get to that outcome? And for us, I used to say paralysis by analysis was a lot of what I saw. Now I call it essentially the paradox of abundance. And the way I essentially define that is the average quality of information is getting, worse and worse. And how do decision makers navigate through that? And so I saw it as an opportunity for us to help navigate. And so how do you do that, right? So, while I believe the average, the quality of that is getting worse and worse, I think the best stuff is getting better and better at the same time. And markets are, of abundance are, kind of simultaneously bad for the median consumer, but good for the intelligent ones, right? And so you got to avoid the gossip and the junk and be able to know how to navigate through that. And so that's where I saw the opportunity for us was to help navigate. And then you see, what's also different now than was different then is, the emergence of companies like Gartner and Infotech,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, a lot of decision making, when I first started getting into the enterprise space, it really seemed to me that all of the knowledge was coming from the direct account team or education, or dare I say, lack of education, was coming from the direct account teams that were trying to sell. And from my understanding, I was always trying to understand the behavior components. Like I majored in, economics and psychology, and I hated economics, but I really liked the psychology component. So I was always looking at the behavior of the situation and the individual. And it was like, what is the direct team trying to achieve and what is their motivation? Right. And so, and then I was looking at from the customer's perspective, what are they trying to achieve and what is their motivation? And sometimes you would see competing interests, right? A lot of times you would see a customer that's like, look, I'm looking for operational efficiencies. We've been with you for 9 years and, our spend is going up. It's not going down. And we have economic pressures now and we need help. Right. And we need to save money. I mean, I've heard that since the beginning. We need to save money. We need to save money. And so that has just like become the easiest thing that we do for a client is obviously identifying operational efficiencies and eliminating waste in the IT budget, not because they made bad decisions, just because it's crept in, again, back to competing interests, right? And so I've been a direct rep, right? And you have to look at how, we were managed and how, and the behavior that was expected of us. And, we're paid to grow revenue. And there's a quota that's put on us. Why is that quota put on us? It's put on us because it needs to drive shareholder value. But if you do too good, we didn't budget that commission for Wall Street. So we're going to have to really work this out. And so that's when I was like, that's when I found out I had the entrepreneurial bug. And I just couldn't see, myself or anyone for that matter being limited by their ability to help customers and being limited in the reward that should come along with that. And so the channel really gives us, and the indirect distribution gives us an opportunity to take the reward and the fruits of our labors and then offer that back to our customers to offset, key initiatives that they want to do. And so I think that's one of the things that makes us truly unique is what we're doing from an achievement credit perspective and how our methodology ties into that decision making. But like I said, the Gartners of the world emerged because of this paradox of abundance. And so I see challenges with their model. It doesn't, just because someone paid to be in the top right, quadrant of the magic quadrant doesn't mean that you're going to have the same experience as somebody else did. And so that's, it's back to the education component, back to, some things that we'll probably get into on this call.
When did you realize that you needed to sort of add more value than just like you talked about transactional relationships and stuff, but a couple years in or however long that might have been, like when did you realize, okay, they need more than just like, here's 3 prices, which one works best for you? Like when did you realize that needed to be more part of the conversation?
When I read my first RFP, and I was like, wow, so they're seeking information. But then I looked at the context of how that RFP was written, who it was written for, and, found out that, there's a process that's going on internally at enterprise organizations where you have IT buyers and you have procurement buyers. And an IT group may want may see a technology or a solution that's a perfect fit for them. But then procurement may get involved, and procurement may say, we don't want to onboard a new vendor. We're not going through that. And so then I saw that IT teams were limited potentially in their ability to solve problems because of processes, that they were, forced to follow. And so we saw that as, it was glaring to me that I'm talking to IT leaders and I'm helping them solve problems. And then we found something outside of all of our control, just from a procurement perspective, that the procurement group had different motivations than the IT group, and sometimes they didn't align. And so I had to find a way to bridge that gap. And so I had to find a way to add value to procurement and add value to IT. And so that's what we believe that that's really changed the game for us, is aligning with procurement groups and walking them through best practices and things that, their vendors haven't told them for the last 20 years. Right. And so, we'll get into it here, I'm sure, later, but, transparency is a big deal for us. And I believe there's a lack of that in the industry, and it creates a lot of the inefficiency and a lot of the resource consumption that's unnecessary. And there's a better way to do this. And so you look at industries around us that are being disrupted. Look what Mark Cuban's doing with cost plus drugs. Look what Tesla's doing in the automotive industry. I've lots of contacts in the automotive industry, and the OEMs are absolutely going to be removing car dealerships. Over the next 5 years, you'll see fewer and fewer car dealerships. Well, if you look at that industry, it's very analogous to what a lot of VARs and a lot of the middlemen that are in the way of procurement from either customer direct to distribution or customer direct to OEM. So there's examples all around us, and people are like, wow, you're really aggressive with your disruption. Aren't you afraid that you're going to upset the wrong people? And I said, well, Walmart had every opportunity to take out Amazon. Ford had every opportunity to take out Tesla. We're a small challenger, and it takes a lot of persistence to get through the disruption, and again, rejecting the rejection along the way. And what we found is that we're gaining a tremendous amount of momentum because the customers are fatigued. The suppliers are even fatigued. And that was a big surprise to me, is that the suppliers are fatigued. And so, so again, in all of that, it was a puzzle to me. And it was, how do we put this puzzle together? And always trying to think, what's the, drive to a successful outcome for the customer. That's paramount. And then continuous improvement on the back end, continually coming forward with continuous improvement, and challenge the status quo. I've said it a long time, and Walt Disney's a huge hero of mine, just because of what he did. If you look at what he did from a business perspective, and one of his quotes was, "It's kind of fun to do the impossible." And that is me.
That's great.
Yep.
So you mentioned that there was some similarities that you noticed between the SMB and the enterprise markets. Can you dig back into that a little bit?
Sure. Well, one of the similarities is they all want to save money.
Right.
They're all taking their guidance from a salesperson who is motivated to sell, to uplift, to sell new products, to sell widgets, to sell something. And I actually thought that if you went the other way with it and you focused on the customer first, and you looked at driving costs down and looked at making recommendations around operational efficiencies, then everybody was interested in that, and so it didn't matter if how many locations you had. I started, with a John Deere, tractor supply company, and his challenges were the same as John Deere's,
Right.
And so yeah, that's when I started to see that, and they, whether they had 5 employees or 5,000 employees, we were seeing a lot of the same things. And so for me, honestly, it was like, okay, where is the return for my organization, and where can we do the most value, and where can we give back the most? And, it was like, wow, the big ones are just as much work as the little ones. And that is true, and I think that's why TSDs really emerged at that point, because you have a lot of independent, small sellers who are distributing still in the transactional way. And, they may not work with enterprise level customers. And so that's where I think you see the channel is really evolve because there are more suppliers. You have that abundance. You have that. There's too much information coming in, and you have to help people sort it out. And really, I mean, I will say, I mean, we see decision making at it's kind of, if you look in psychology, decision making as a human being kind of, your ability to make good decisions kind of slows down after 17 years old. And we see a lot of that behavior, regardless of a balance sheet or who they are in the marketplace, whether they're a Fortune 100 or what. It's still people doing business with people. And so that's really, where that's what we recognized is, that similarity is always going to be there. The difference is how complex is their environment now, and what can we do to help and add value and really drive results while minimizing the impact on the business. You can't just show up and say, hey, I've got a great solution. You can move from this product to this platform and it'll do this, this, and this, and it'll only take you 18 months to get there, and that will be tabled, because it's resource consumption. And so that was one of the areas too that we identified as like, look, if we could alleviate resource consumption in these large enterprise organizations, and if we operated as an extension of them and we educated that, hey, there's a new best practice out there that your sales team is not telling you about, because your sales team may actually not benefit from an advisor, and a consulting firm that's educating you on how to get to this outcome. And so, that's, we still find ourselves there today, but it's, I think the channel is having more and more and more success because, frankly, there's just not a lot of new salespeople entering the marketplace. I mean, that's been my experience, at least. So it's quite surprising, actually.
Yeah, it is interesting that, it's interesting to think about what the channel is going to look like 10 years from now, given that there aren't, as far as I know, with the partners that I talk to, there aren't a lot of, younger folks entering in, opening new agencies or, even taking over agencies, for example. Like, I wonder what it's going to look like 10 years from now.
Right.
Because obviously there is a need there from the, at an organizational level, especially when you consider that they generally, IT staffs generally are overburdened.
Sure.
And, understaffed.
Right.
So they just don't have the time to go out and,
right.
keep the newest and latest and greatest technologies, keep up to speed on that. Plus, pulling the levers, pushing the buttons.
Right.
And ultimately the tough part is like organizations ultimately want, the buttons pushed and the levers pulled, but they also want to move ahead technologically. So like, how do you do that?
Yep. I had that conversation yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, how do you do that with an overburdened IT staff? And then, and then knowing that, like, and there's not a ton of new agencies coming up into the channel. Like I don't know. What do you think?
So what I know to be true is that clients will always welcome partnerships, who from organizations that will help them run and grow their business. Where do I see the channel in 5 years? Less transactional. It's solution selling today. Not necessarily selling, but customers are looking for solutions. They have so much information coming at them now that I think IT buyers, one of the first things that I've noticed is from an IT buyer's perspective, if they're in a large organization, they're literally trying to allocate budget to an organization that can help them make decisions, or at a minimum, provide them information or analyst, third-party analysts and independent information that says, this is why I made the decision. Whether it went good or bad, this is why I did it. And so, that points to the Gartners and the Infotechs of the world. And that's why we've basically standardized, our recommendations on those that come from third-party analysts, right? We've heard people say, we eat our own dog food, we drink our own champagne, whatever. we don't do any of that. What we do is we let our prospects talk to our customers. And so, one of the things that I say is don't take my word for it, speak to our customers. And so, we make the investment in those relationships with, the Gartners and the Infotechs of the world, because there is value there. There's information there. You just have to know how to navigate and sort it out. And it's not coming from a place of an organization that's, trying to sell something or trying to hit a quota or trying to, protect their total billed revenue. It's okay. Where do we need to be from a roadmap perspective? Because these we can't make wholesale changes every 36 months when our sales team comes in and says we have to, we got a new product, we need to move you to it. They can't go. It's not realistic. So, from a channel perspective in 5 years, it's all solution based. It all has to come from a place of education. That's why our methodology is rooted in, strategy, procurement, and delivery, right? The delivery component has engineering components to it because, there's the engineering talent out there is it's global. There's global competition for engineering resources now, and it's hard to keep good engineers now, right? And so I think from our perspective as the channel, that's an opportunity for us to really provide engineering capabilities and engineering talent that almost functions like staff aug, right? And so that's one of the things that we've presented to customers that we're really starting to see an uptick in consumption. Is they're starving for help to help, for an organization to help them navigate, the paradox of abundance. If their employer will give them budget, then they can go get, a Gartner or an Infotech. If they don't get budget, then what happens? Then they're on an island. And so that's when an organization like Caliber can step in, who is, we've invested in those tools. So again, one of the things that we've really kind of encouraged these organizations to do is, as they partner with an organization like us who's there to run and grow their business, utilize the tool sets that we've invested in that you don't have to allocate budget to. And so, providing Infotech information, providing Gartner information, I made the investment. They don't have to. When we're in poor economic conditions, the first thing that went in COVID was Gartner. Go look at Gartner's results and see what happened. It was viewed as a luxury item, and organizations said it's got to go. And so we had it the whole time. And so it was an opportunity for us to provide guidance and recommendation. It's independent third party. It's not something that's, created by us. I'm certainly not taking the credit for knowing everything. I'm simply helping them navigate how to get that information the most effective way. And then from a procurement perspective, it was, there's a better way to do this, and we tested for 2 years on a methodology that will change the industry, and it is changing the industry. And the reason it's changing the industry is because we're driving and mandating transparency, and if you ask suppliers what their margin is and they don't give you that number, that's a mystery. So we have a saying here, where there's mystery, there's margin, and sunlight's the best disinfectant. So let's bring that out, right? And so, when customers say we want to save money, we go right to how procurement is operating. And what that means for us is that we've found that procurement organizations are oftentimes incented and bonused on how much money they're saving the organization. So when you can take competing interests and align them from an IT perspective and a procurement perspective, and all we're doing is providing the conduit and the methodology behind that, then things move faster. And so that's one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is speeding up, business, right? And so back to that, helping them run and grow. That procurement component is really, we've found opportunity and disruption, and what the disruption is it's challenging a legacy business model that these multi-billion-dollar companies who are servicing them today cannot pivot to. Right? They are publicly traded companies, and publicly traded companies, at least from a sales rep's perspective, those who are employed at publicly traded companies aren't really allowed to be 100% transparent in the company's, financials or in the deal, what's in the deal. And so we've been able to really attack that with our Novar methodology. And, Novar is kind of a play on words, but it does have, meaning in that it's Spanish for novate, which means to replace something old with something new. And that's really what we're trying to do now. Right. And so we didn't realize it at the time, but Mark Cuban's doing the same thing. Right. He's just doing it in a different industry with cost plus drugs. It's funny. I called it, we identified this Novar methodology as cost plus transparency. And because these transactions lack it. We ask customers all the time about deal registration. They don't know what it means. And so we're bringing transparency to that component, right? And so to see somebody like Mark Cuban, who's obviously had a fair amount of success in what he's done in this world, he saw an opportunity for disruption in bringing transparency to how you and I acquire medicine, right? And so, and what he identified is there was exorbitant margins, right? And no one was bringing transparency to that. So and we're doing the same thing. We're just doing it on the technology side. We haven't found anybody else that's doing that. No one's taking that approach. And so we've made a big push in Texas, especially by sponsoring the Orby Awards. And, Novar is a prominent figure now in the VAR space. But it's a completely different methodology, all the while using the same distribution handoffs that the legacy business model used. So cost plus transparency, it doesn't exist, and we're bringing that to the market. So yeah, I'm rambling.
No, I'm interested. So when did you? I mean, Novar. Let's get into that a little bit. So when did you realize that? I mean, obviously you follow these prominent figures like Mark Cuban, but I mean,
when did I realize that there was an opportunity there?
Well, a gap, opportunity gap. I mean, the VAR community is a large community,
successful
in our space, right?
Sure.
So, I mean, what did you identify as like an area of opportunity or an area where you could make a difference for your customers?
Sure. Yeah. Well, so the first inclination was how VARs were starting to work with TSDs. And I noticed that TSDs were doing VAR enablement. The problem that I have with that and how it affects my business is those same VARs are in all of my accounts. And so when a TSD is coming to me and saying, "Hey, we're your partner. We want to enable you for success," they're also enabling my competitor. And so it just didn't sit well with me that their growth was really based on VAR enablement. And so that was really the first inclination that I thought, oh wow, VARs are trying to do what we do as trusted advisors and as consultants and whatnot, and they were using indirect distribution. But then I looked at, well, how was that indirect? How were they offering value? And I didn't see. Oftentimes the customers didn't even know that that was occurring, and so I was like, okay, there's an opportunity there because the VARs have relationships. So let's look into that. And then so as we start,
what were they doing?
What were the VARs doing?
How were they? Yeah, what were they doing that you saw was how were they acting as an advisor?
Oh, well, I'm sure they do a great job at being advisors in some instances. But what we saw was that they would find out there was an opportunity, let's say for UCAS. And then, behind the scenes, it was basically just try to use the relationship that the VAR had with the customer to basically get tagged as the partner of record and add no value. And so we saw multiple instances of where a VAR was tagged, as the partner of record on a unified communication deal, but there was no delivery mechanism or delivery component or project management associated with it. And we went to the customer and we said, you're going to need to bring in, if you're not buying project management services through them, you're going to need to, because this is a very laborious process, and without project management, you're going to run into delays. And so we actually thought that was actually adding more complexity and actually muddying the waters for the customers. And we saw a lot of failed implementations because the VAR was the partner of record, but the VAR didn't take the approach of managing to a successful outcome. Why? Because VARs are transactional. Right. And so it's that transaction. So the other thing too, while we were noticing that, we saw a tremendous amount of the TSDs were just absolutely looking at VAR enablement. And that kind of had a competing effect on our organization. I didn't see the benefit coming out to the customer in the end, and at the end of the solution. And we were getting brought in at the end of opportunities, and we were cleaning those messes up. So we were cleaning up messes, and we were cleaning up implementations where the VAR just got tagged as the partner of record and moved on, and did not manage to a successful outcome. And we have found so many customers that were in that position. But the other thing, so anytime we see anything like that, we start going to our customers and we start going to prospects, and we just, we're seeking to understand. And so when we would meet with procurement groups, we would seek to understand who is your preferred distributor, who is your preferred VAR. And the response we got was shocking. It was not what I was expecting, and there wasn't one. And they had them all. And so, and what we did find is it typically came down to a relationship with an account team, like it always does. And so the best account teams had those customers had the best experience. And so that's to be expected. But we just, everywhere we went and even this week, we've had 3, we presented to a Fortune 100 this week, and we asked the same question: who's the preferred distribution point? And they said there isn't one. But they said we have them all, and so explaining the Novar methodology, one of the coolest things about what we're doing here with the Novar methodology is we're talking to executives who've been doing this 20, 25 years. And I love hearing them say, why has no one told me this? And that's the coolest compliment we get, And so, and then from there, it's just blocking and tackling, executing, proof of concept, proving the model. And, I can't tell you how, what it's done for us essentially is when you're selling to IT buyers and Caliber's, methodology around strategy, procurement, delivery, and trying to be unique, that doesn't mean you get to become a vendor in their ecosystem. That means you just get to be a part of the team if they trust you and you establish the transfer of trust. Novar actually gets us onboarded as a vendor in procurement. And so we've been meeting with Fortune 100 companies, and in 2 meetings, we're becoming a vendor. And that has changed the game. And why? Because they're seeking transparency. They're seeking education. The paradox of abundance is real, right? They need help. And that's what, for me, being a consultant is all about. It's a help, not sell model. It's make recommendations, let the customer make the decision. And then we're there to guide and protect, essentially. And so, we turn our hat around, once contracts are signed, and we focus on delivery and driving to a successful outcome. And so, cool part about the channel is how we're compensated. If you drive to successful outcomes, you'll have customers for decades, and we'll be compensated for decades. And we educate customers around that. We're completely transparent in the money that we make, because we believe that they should share in that. Because in essence, it's their dollars that are being routed to us. And so we're completely transparent in that. And so, kind of back to what makes us unique is, on the back end of that is once the revenue is billing, once the successful outcomes are met, we're providing options for them to achieve credits against professional services, against, Novar transactions, things of that nature. So yeah, kind of back to your question, the customers are open and honest that it's ripe for disruption. It's ripe for improvement. And so you can just see other industries are doing this, and car dealers, as I mentioned, OEMs. The car dealerships are going away. And car dealers are analogous to VARs to me. They're, with the last time you went and bought a car and you asked the car dealership, what's their margin? They show you an invoice. Well, in that invoice is margin, but they're not showing you the margin that's in the SG&A, and so when a VAR it captures deal registration and they're getting 25, 35, 45% off, and there's only one deal registration given to a VAR, and the customer thinks they're doing a great job by going out and sourcing 3 or 4 or 5 or 8 different quotes from different VARs. There's one that has a significant advantage over the others, and it's been shocking to me to see that there are procurement departments that have been procuring technology for 20 plus years. They don't know what deal registration is. And why is that a dirty secret? Why is that being hidden? Why? And it's not. It should be shared. And that's really where we're coming in, is that we're coming in with driving transparency, cost plus transparency, and we had an instance last week where there was a VAR that charged 35% margin on $1 million transaction, and it was just moved paper. They moved paper. That's all they did. So when the customer found out there was a $350,000 margin in that for them, we educated, and they went and asked if they would be transparent in what the margin was, and didn't happen. Well, there's a reason it didn't happen, because it can't, And so we see that there's a lot of customers that are seeking that transparency, and they're all trying to save money. And so if they know they're going to spend $10 million this year through distribution, through a VAR, then they need to consider no VAR, because it's the only one that provides transparency.
I think the interesting thing is, like, you're sort of coming at the customer in it's to me, it seems like a 3-pronged approach, right? There's the VAR approach, there's the consultant approach,
yep.
And you're also offering like some, call it, I would say, an MSP model, maybe if you're offering like professional services, that sort of thing, yep. On the back end. Is that fair to say? Like it's sort of all those things combined?
Yeah, so we've made it real easy for customers to consume it, right? So we actually put the whole process and the whole methodology in a statement of work. And really, the thing about me and what I would advise other people that are getting into the channel is win fast, lose fast, and define expectations. And so, our statements of work define what's expected of the customer back to us. And we're defining what they can expect from us. And one of the biggest challenges I see in any successful deployment or outcome is truly clarifying expectations on the front end, so everyone knows what's required. Because sometimes a decision will be made in an organization and then handed off to a group to deliver, and that group is already overworked. Their resources are already oversubscribed, and then and so it could get tabled. I mean, we've seen projects never get deployed. We've seen customers pay for the same tool with 2 different vendors, and one never gets deployed, and it makes no sense how that happens, right? And so from our perspective, we're defining it in a statement of work that this is what's expected of you. This is what you can expect from us. These are the outcomes that will be delivered, and in that we provide a rate sheet for professional service components. So the engineering support, the network support, project coordinators, project managers, it's basically an a la carte option. The neat thing about that is that all of those hourly rates, you're getting the highest caliber talent in the industry. And it's being subsidized by the indirect compensation we're receiving from the suppliers. So what we've done is we've essentially gamified it to where the customer, the more the customer the more the customer transacts with suppliers that have indirect distribution capabilities, which is pretty much all of them. Right. We're able to gamify that, and so they essentially source that through our organization. We provide subsidies back against professional services, engineering talent, coordinators, managers, you name it. from a project perspective, and then we go above and beyond that as they hit thresholds. We're able to provide achievement credits over and above that. And so, what the feedback that we've gotten from customers is that it's like a zero cost staff aug, and so that's a big deal. And so we've when I started the organization, I worked from home, and I wanted to find a way to be different. And so I would just go ask these large organizations if they could set up could I get a cubicle, and could I office out of your office one day a week? And so that's funny how that we still do that today. And so that's one of the things that's really cool about what we're doing is that we get, we're given parking lot access, we're given badges, we're given, they truly set us up as an extension of their team. And we're not in there trying to, be a contractor by any stretch of the imagination. What we're simply trying to do is add value and help them alleviate, resource consumption and drive to help them get stuff done essentially. And, and so we've just, over the years, I've learned that I've gotten asked so many times, okay, what do I get? What is it that you do? And so we just, and so instead of having an hour-long conversation about educating, it's like, here it is, it's black and white. We've literally put it in a statement of work. And we've learned over the years that, there's some customers that don't have budget. And so a zero cost SOW is something that it's much easier for them to consume. There's also customers that see no value in zero, in free, right? And so you have to understand that moving into the organization, that there are customers that they just cannot compute. There is value in anything that is free. And then you have customers that are, I absolutely understand this. We know how to we know how to take advantage of this, and we paper it up as a zero cost SOW because we're being compensated by the services that they're buying from their service providers. And so it's black and white now. It's very easy for them to consume. They understand the Novar methodology and how to access that. We've expanded that offering to where we're now moving into an e-commerce marketplace environment with Novar. A lot of what McKinsey says is that these large organizations are going to be self-servicing and buying, off of, through e-commerce and marketplace portals. And so there again lies the opportunity to, the paradox of abundance. When they log into a marketplace, there's going to be all of those options right in front of them. And how do they make any sense of that? And so really being able, so having that engine and having that marketplace where organizations can go transact directly with a Microsoft and Adobe or what have you. And so now the whole SaaS conversation is entered, and that's what's different. As I mentioned earlier, the evolution of the channel and technology is, I didn't get into this to sell software. It's where we're at, right? And it's just we're just seeing this convergence and this paradox of abundance again, and paralysis by analysis. And how do you help them navigate that? And so it's giving them a tool that they know, number one, has transparency in it, so they don't have to worry about delaying the decision-making process because they now have to go run an RFP. They now have to go get 5 different quotes. Well, if you have transparency, you're dealing with the gospel. So there's no reason to go waste everyone's time, spend more money, do RFPs. And so again, it was just trying to find ways to make this easier for people to consume it. And so again, the evolution of Novar now is standing up the marketplace where they can transact software solutions directly through that platform. So here we are now. We're talking about software, and it's not a place that I thought I would be in. But again, it goes back to we're helping customers buy. That's essentially what we're doing at the end of the day. And like I said earlier, from a consultative approach, it's help not sell for us.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. And obviously, you're doing very well. You've got a lot going on, obviously, and I truly think that you are a disruptor in a positive way, and mm-hmm. There's a strong chance that you're going to sort of shape the way that agencies operate with in the next 5 years. And I think the transparency aspect of what you're doing is not only good for you as an agent, but for the organization, because it keeps everybody honest. It forces you as the consultant, as the agent, as the distributor or the VAR, as the professional services provider. It forces you to, show your cards,
right?
Explain where you're adding value, and it's amazing. So,
I've had a lot had a lot of good mentors. I'd say Ron Shields, Robert Bowling, Daryl Hellers. Those were some of the first. Lisa Chasen, most recently Jeff Shepstone. I mean, all great people, and all I will tell you that we've had conversations, some of us, and we're shocked. It's like, are we the only ones that are really thinking about this? And sometimes I think we are. And I don't know why that is, honestly, but there's opportunity there, so be it. But there's a lot of good people out there, a lot of good partners out there that are trying to do good work. And there's disruption came to our space too, with private equity entering. And so, we as business owners have to navigate what's best for us. Right. And the reality is that this is an industry that is aging, and I don't see a lot of new creative talent coming up. So we may be, the last wave or one of the last waves coming up. But in all the disruption that's going on, there's opportunity for those that harness it.
I agree. And well said. We're coming up on time, and there's probably another hour or so that we could go, because we didn't even touch on. We'll do a part 2 for sure. But I absolutely love the conversation, and I love what you're doing.
Thanks.
Can you tell everybody like how to get a hold of you or how to find you and all that sort of stuff?
Sure. Yeah. So NoVAR is www.no-var.com. Caliber is www.caliber.solutions. So those are two of the go-to-market strategies that we're utilizing right now. And then LinkedIn is a good place to find me as well.
Excellent. Yeah. Chris, thank you so much. Like I said, I think the audience is due for a part 2, because we could have gone on for way longer. Yeah. So we'll have to get together on that. But thank you so much, sir.
You got it.
And thanks everybody for watching.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Channel Champions podcast. You can find this and all our episodes on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or your favorite streaming platforms. If you have any suggestions for future episodes, guests, or topics, please reach out to us. We appreciate you coming along with us on this journey and hope you'll be back for the next episode. Until then, stay tuned, stay connected, and stay inspired.